Hello and welcome, this is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm sharing the 13 days of Craftoween day 12. So this is a Halloween advent calendar for 13 days, and I'm sharing a video a day for the last 13 days of August. If you've missed any, they're all in the same playlist. They're easy to find. Each day has a Halloween themed die, and there's also a coordinating stamp set perfect with sentiments for each one of the cards, as well as some Halloween colored sequins. So today we have this cauldron with the little witch's legs on it. So I have my cauldron die cut out of some treasured Onyx cardstock. I'm using the mirror finish for this one. It comes in 5 different finishes. And then for the accents on the cauldron, I have them die cut out of some matte silver cardstock. And this is from the Silver Treasured Cardstock pack. This is just going to give a variety of different textures when the cauldron is totally finished. You could use regular cardstock for this as well, but I always love when there's just a little bit of extra texture, or different textures when I'm creating cards. So I'm going to start with gluing the cauldron together. I'm using some Barely Art glue in a fine line bottle, and by using some liquid glue, it gives me some wiggle time. I can make sure that everything is positioned perfectly. I also like to use an acrylic block to hold my die cuts down while they are drying. Just frees up my hands to work on other things rather than holding pieces together. Now these treasured cardstocks, or these specialty cardstocks, have a coating on them. So they do take just a little bit longer to dry than regular cardstock. They're not porous on the one side, on the front side of them, the top side of them. So you do want to give them just a little bit of extra dry time. For the legs, for the little witch's legs, I have those die cut out of some violet cardstock, and then the accents die cut out of raven cardstock. So the little stripes for the legs, as well as the witch's boots, those are die cut out of raven cardstock. So gluing them together is really, really easy. When you die cut Spellbinders die cuts, especially the ones that have different layers to them, it leaves an indent showing you exactly where the other layers go on top. So there's very little guesswork to it. It makes it really, really easy to assemble these. And by using the liquid glue, I can make sure that I have the time to position everything perfectly. I don't have to position it right the first time. So with most of the die cuts together, I'm going to glue the little legs on the cauldron, and then I'm going to set those aside to totally dry while I'm working on the background of the card. Now, all of the cards that I've been creating, I'm doing really, really simple ink blending for the backgrounds. You could easily use colored cardstock if you want. I like the look of a few different colors on the backgrounds, especially ones that kind of tie into the different colors that are in the cards. For this background, I'm using some Twisted Citron. I'm using Hickory Smoke and Carved Pumpkin. So I'm going to do kind of an ombre-ish, but in completely different colors. I'm doing the Twisted Citron at the bottom. I'm fairly light-handed with the ink. I am heavier-handed around the outside of the cardstock because I do like that heavier inking around the edge. It just frames it in just a little bit more. The Hickory Smoke is going to go in the center to kind of break up the two colors that I'm using. I'm using the Twisted Citron on the bottom and Carved Pumpkin at the top. And even though these two would kind of blend together okay-ish, I do like the break of the Hickory Smoke between them. Then I'm going to do that Carved Pumpkin on the top of my cardstock. Now this is Hammermill Cardstock. It is trimmed to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I like this cardstock for ink blending. It's nice and smooth. It takes the ink really, really well. And I always ink blend on my sticky mat. It holds that cardstock so that I don't have to touch it and get ink all over my fingers. So once I'm done, I can pull that cardstock off, clean off my mat. I always clean it off right after using it just to make sure there's no leftover ink there. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment before I assemble my card. So for most of these cards, have been using the same stamp that is in the sample picture in the little folder, mainly because they coordinate perfectly with that particular die set, and this is no different. So I put my cardstock in there, put my stamp, position it, make sure that it's nice and straight, and those grid lines on the front of the Misti really help make sure that that stamp is nice and straight. Although these stamps often have a combination of different fonts, so they're a little bit more forgiving if they're not exactly perfectly straight. For the mat for this card, I trimmed some violet cardstock down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, gluing that to my A2 card base, and now I can glue down my ink blended background. So you can see that having the liquid glue in a fine bottle, it's really easy for die cuts, but it works perfectly for gluing the larger areas as well. Obviously you use a little bit more glue, but it's nice to be able to take those larger back pieces and also be able to move and shimmy them in place and make sure that you've got the mats even around them. So with my base of my card ready to go, I can start adding my die cuts. Now, the one thing that I wanted to do was just put a little bit of Hickory Smoke ink on my little skull and bone here, just to make them look a little bit grungy. If I were to do that on the sticky mat, I'd probably get a little bit too much ink. So I'm just using the remainder of the ink that's on my brush and just doing it in my fingers. A little bit will get on my fingers, but really there's not a lot of ink left on that brush, so I don't really need to worry about it too much. I always have a damp cloth close by if by chance I get too much or more than I was planning on. I'm going to glue that cauldron down first, and then I can glue down the little accessory bit. So that skull and bone that we just did the ink blending on, and then there's a little swizzle stick that can get glued in there as well. And I'm using that same glue to glue everything together, and my acrylic block to hold pieces down in the middle or between gluing, just to hold everything nice and flat. Now this die set does have a few layers to glue inside the cauldron for kind of like a bubbly brew-ish, but I decided that rather than use those die cuts, I'm going to use the sequins that come in this kit. I haven't actually used them yet, so I thought this was a good opportunity to do that. So I glue my little accessory pieces in there, and then I'm going to do a very technical way of gluing my sequins in there. I'm going to put some on my desk, and then I'm just going to put a liberal amount of glue on the inside part of my cauldron, pinch a bunch of the sequins in my hands and just drop those into that wet glue. I'll push it in, and then I'll just tap off the excess. Once I've done that, if there's some areas that say have too many purple ones and I want to just break that up a little bit, I'll just glue in an orange one, or vice versa. I'll just mix up the colors a little bit that way. Another option would be to individually add them if you want to make sure they're all nice and evenly dispersed around. But I figured this was a little bit quicker as well as just a little bit more organic. I'm going to be able to add a decent amount of those sequins, but I can always customize it because this glue is liquid. If by chance I don't like where something is, I can always take it out. I don't end up taking any out deliberately, but I can do that. I do end up going and just adding a few opposite colors because there is a cluster of orange in one area, a cluster of purple in another area. So I do go ahead, add glue to those areas and just add a different color just to break that up a little bit. Other than that, I do really like the way that they went into that cauldron. It's just a different look than the cardstock, and because the sequins are metallic and shiny and they also have those beveled edges around them, it gives it a little bit more dimension as well as texture. So it looks really, really cool. And just like that specialty cardstock, because the sequins are plastic, they're non-porous, they are going to take just a little bit of extra time to dry. So you do want to be patient with them. Let them sit to dry for probably longer than you really think they need to. If you can see the glue on the sides, the glue, it starts out white and it dries clear. So you can just kind of keep an eye on some areas that you see glue and make sure that you can see that is turned clear. That way you know that it is set. But you do have to wait for that to dry just a little bit longer than you would have to for cardstock. I've never timed how much longer, but because of the non-porousness, you do want to make sure to just allow that extra time. So here is that finished card there, and I love all the sparkle that those sequins give on the inside. You can see how easy it catches the light. The cauldron, I love the shiny finish to it, and then the matte silver handles and rim really catch the light as well as add just a little bit of extra visual texture to it. Thank you so much for joining me today for the 13 Days of Craftoween Day 12. I will be back tomorrow and we will share the final day, Day 13. We'll see you then.